Folks, welcome back to the BizWorld channel, iHealth Radio, the iHealth channel, the network, with your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, new topic. But this topic is about business, this topic about leadership today, because I have an expert. I mean, she is a coach, she's a consultant, she's a professional presence expert. She helps leaders and teams walk the walk and talk the talk and look the part. So that's big stuff. So we're going to dissect today the concept of leadership, the traditional concept of leadership that we know, and maybe the proactive and more contemporary version of that, and what it looks like, what it sounds like. So with me, I have Katherine Lazaruk. Katherine, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Hurricane. It's great to be here.
Hey, listen, I mean, we have to talk about this, right? I mean, business is big, and leadership is at the core of all of it, right?
Mhm.
What makes things go around is a good leader. But
Mhm.
but let's we're going to talk about what's a good leader, and what are the challenges and the work you do. But let's talk about your background first, like your little bit of history about your work and some of the, I guess, the milestones or the successes you've had.
Sure, I'd be happy to give you a little nutshell. Like many people, that we don't often talk about this, but like many people, when I finished my degrees, which were in voice performance and education 100 years ago, I was splitting my time between singing professionally in the opera and teaching elementary music to kids like kindergarten to grade 4. And the further along I got in both of those careers, the less I liked it, because both of those careers have quite narrow parameters, and I'm not a very good small box person. But it took me 12 years and a lung tumor to figure out that these jobs were suffocating me and I shouldn't be in them. And so when I got diagnosed, it was a real wake-up call. I was like, okay, what am I going to do instead? And I had no idea. I was just took medical leave and then I quit. And 6 months later, the tumor was gone, and I had a job doing corporate training at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the big 4 accounting firms, like professional services firms in the world. And in that between time, I started working with a coach. I had never really worked with a coach other than like music coaches, but I'd never worked with a business coach before. And he was kind of an alpha male dude. And so he's sort of macho, and he's sitting at his big desk and he's like, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up, little lady?" And today I'd be like, "You're fired. Don't speak to me like that." But then, I thought it was funny. And so I laughed, and I don't know, are you a visual thinker? Or, like, do you think in pictures?
Always.
Right. So I am too, but this had never happened to me before, and it's never really happened since. I literally had a vision, full on vision. The first company name and the first tagline that I ever used. And the first company name was ICU Image Consulting, and the tagline was Intensive Care for Your Image. And I had this little download, and then I just laughed. I'm like, that's not even a real job. Like, who does that job? And he said, it's a real job, and you could do that job. And so I thought, well, I look all right. I've read some books. I'll just get a website and some business cards and start practicing. So that's what I did. I do not recommend that approach to anybody now, knowing what I know about image consulting. Now I'm like, please get some training. Please do not just go in, because when you're talking about somebody's image, it's a very intimate, sort of deep psychological place, and you can do a lot of damage if you are not aware of how to interact with somebody and how to draw things out of them. So don't do that, but get some training. However, I continued on, and then right in the recession, when my contract ended at PricewaterhouseCoopers, I'm like, this is a great time to start an image consulting business full time. And so then I went to Toronto here in Canada, and I got my certifications in image consulting and advanced image consulting from the International Image Institute in Toronto. And the woman who runs that company, she liked me, so I interned with her. Then she really liked me, so she made me her Western Canada image trainer. So in addition to my private practice, all of a sudden I was teaching consultants how to be consultants at Langara, which is a college here in Vancouver. And so things were ticking along, doing well. And then as my clients started to ascend the ranks in their corporate world, they would say to me, they're like, we really want you to come and work with our executive teams, but we're tired of explaining to the people that write the checks that you're not really an image consultant, that you're doing a lot more than that. So you need to change your business name. And I was like, okay. So I did. So I changed it to Lazaruk Consulting in 2018, and I never looked back. Now I can do what I like.
I love this. Well, first of all, what a transition. I mean, opera,
Yeah.
teaching kids, I mean that, but again, that's still you. That's still that you have that. It's part of who you are. I mean,
Mhm.
teaching is teaching, right? So training is that, and then opera is you're singing, and you're performing. So you're performing for people. So you
Yeah.
use those skills and apply them into the real world of business, and using it into the consulting and
Mhm.
I guess coaching modality, which is great. But I do love the approach that you found yourself doing this, and you looked at somebody to guide you. And
Mhm.
by the way, I love what you just said about how that went in terms of that first meeting with that guy versus what it looks like today. I mean, the world has changed, and
Of course.
obviously things are different. But there is a an awakening to those I guess rules, and how to behave, how to say things. And I'm
Mhm.
sure you apply some of these things because people need to know, especially
Yeah.
at the higher you have to interact with people, you better know what to say, how to say it, and
For
who
sure.
you are interacting with. So it's very important to know these things. But I love also the concept that you went, got your certifications and stuff, and then you
Mhm.
became the guru, the expert, in the part of the world that is necessary, need
Yeah.
in this. And
Mhm.
and and listen, there's nothing wrong with that. You've helped quite a bit of folks, and you still are doing it. But so let's break it down. So personal image consulting. I mean, we're talking about just like working with somebody is how they appear. What let's define that for audiences.
So the easiest way to think of it, as defined by our professional association, and I love this definition, are the ABCs of image. So anything related to appearance, how you show up, what you're wearing, what your grooming looks like, how you show up, appearance, behavior, the way you're doing what you're doing, and then communication. So everything from, like, I'll coach clients on everything from how to prepare a keynote all the way up to how to have a difficult conversation. So it's really wide ranging, which I love because it keeps me really on my toes in terms of the things I need to learn and the things I need to share. But one of the things I've come to realize, well, I've always been challenged by in the image consulting world. I'm a bit of an outlier because I hate shopping. I don't care about fashion. I mean, I'm only interested in it to the point where it's a vehicle for your self-expression and a way for you to show the world who you are. That's the only reason that I'm interested in any of that. I don't really, not a big fan of labels. I don't really care about status displays, but there are people that do. And so what I've come to realize is in my work over the last decade and a bit is that image only matters where it matters. But where it matters, it really matters. And what we've come to understand is image has changed over time. Like based on because the guidelines that we used to follow were really based in a white supremacist old white man way of thinking, right? So women had to show up sort of dressed like men. That's where the whole power suit came from in the 80s, right? Women had to behave in that sort of more aggressive, compartmentalized, stereotypical way. Obviously, not all men are like that, not all women are like that. But these guidelines were so rigid that nobody could really express themselves fully in the corporate context. And now what people are realizing is, yeah, we need people to be who they are. So a great example is like the Crown Act. Like, I can hardly believe that you have to legislate that it's okay for Black people to wear their hair the way it grows out of their head at work, but they had to. So the Crown Act has come in California and in other places around the States. And those kinds of issues, like these kinds of things, are really affecting the way that image consultants practice now. Because in doing the research for my latest book, I looked at a bunch of the new titles for executive presence, and I got to tell you, those books are the same books that were written 30 years ago, just people regurgitating the same information. And I'm like, that's not going to fly with the way the world is now. It's not going to fly. So I'm kind of glad that the world of executive presence is catching up to what I've been saying for the last 15 years, which is like, you need to be your real self, your whole self, and come to work as your complete self and not just as a compartmentalized version of you.
Well, Catherine, thank you. I mean, there's a lot in what you just stated. I mean, obviously, you do courses about that, but here's the thing, right? I love it how you've kind of almost in very simple concept described a few things. One is what is that image, right? Like your presence, so the way you dress, the way you speak, and the way you behave. So I mean, those are three things that we need to be aware of. Now, it's funny because you were saying that I'm looking, how do I appear right now? I mean, I got a T-shirt that says Hurricane H. I'm being judged right now. But I love what you said. Like, you got
Unless
to
you're
be who
paying
you
me to
are.
judge you, I'm not judging you. I'm off the clock, man. I
Well, no,
get that
but
a lot. Like at networking events, people like they find out what I do and they're like, "Oh my God, how do I look?" And I'm like, "Well, how do you feel about the way you look? Like, why are you asking me? Right?
listen,
You're not paying
I
me to judge you. I don't judge you."
well, what you did confirm, like you gotta be who you are, what makes you feel comfortable. So
Exactly.
so technically it works. So I'm okay. I feel
Yeah, you're
good about it. But that being self-aware, I think that's one thing that
right.
that's a key element, right? So you always have to. But let's talk about the why in just in your opinion and at least in expertise.
Sure.
Why? I mean, you mentioned that it was just the way it was. It was the white, man's way of dressing up, and there's an appearance of how you should look as a man and how you should look as a woman, and so on and so forth. That was the archaic way, right?
Yeah.
But traditionally, I mean, listen, I come from a sales world, right? So
Right.
so in sales, I mean, when I started in the industry, you had to wear a suit, you had to look
100%.
sharp,
Yeah.
and especially I was in the I'm still in the senior market, so you're kind of
Mhm.
like cater to the folks that were in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And so that's kind of like the look that was like if you were a business professional, that's how you
Mhm.
dress. You would basically appear in something that's kind of like fashionable to their era and stuff. So it
Mhm.
kind of, was almost a minute. And we did transit a little bit into like polos and t-shirts eventually, became a lot more casual, things like that. But there is that people look down at people if they're dressed down or they're not really, like you have to by a certain look, a suit, and this and that. You have like there was a time where if you didn't wear a tie, that's a problem, right?
Sure.
Now you go to conferences, tie is optional, right? So that's gone, right?
Mhm.
Some of the I guess the bigger guys, I mean, in that the change, and I can go just easily as Steve Jobs, for example, right? I mean,
Sure.
he casualed down, big time to the whole world of corporate. I mean, he is one of the best, and
Yeah.
I have yet to see. I think maybe early on he had like some suit pictures that I can or some videos, but
Yeah. Of
later on you'll see him more in t-shirts, jeans and
course.
stuff, being cool and still being it's all about the behavior, about the message, about the communication, and really opened a whole new world to
Mhm.
the new candidates or I guess the new labor force or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call the employees of the new generation, right?
Mhm.
Because now it's a lot of these companies they don't care about that, and
Well, sorry,
maybe
I'm interrupting you a little bit, only just
that's
because
okay.
I don't think it's that they don't care. And actually, there's research around just specifically referring to Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg or people like that. There is some research around male dress codes that it only matters up until you're earning about $250,000 a year. Once you're earning that kind of money, you can do a little bit more of what you like. But up until that point, it makes a difference. And I think the most important thing in all of this is know your audience. So, for example, if I'm going to be presenting to a bunch of bank executives, you can bet I'm going to be pulling out a suit. Now, it might be a flaming pink suit because that reflects who I am, but it'll still be a suit, right? So I think it's very important to understand your audience and where you're going in order to, I don't want to say fit in, but in order to basically, your image is a way of letting people know who you are before you speak. And you can make some choices about that. So when I talk to, because it's true that the way you show up does affect how the way people treat you. It affects it. There's so much research around that. You were saying you're in the sales world. There's one study that talks about sales associates wearing lipstick versus not. The sales associates, women who wear lipstick, actually sell more than women who didn't. And there's a whole new body of research on something called enclothed cognition, which is what you put on your body actually affects the way you think. So that stuff is really fascinating. So there's a ton of data to support that, yes, look good, feel good, show up, look a certain way, get treated a certain way. It still applies. It's starting to break down gradually now as people are seeing different examples of leadership and different examples in the media of how people show up. And it's still happens that people judge a book by their cover, but it's becoming harder and harder to do that because people are not giving those social cues in the clothing that they wear. But I can tell you for sure, if I say to someone that I'm a professional presence expert and I don't show up turned out, they doubt, right? Of course. Why wouldn't they? Right? They'd be like, I don't want to look like you. And early on in my career, I had some issues with that because I was super interested in self-expression. And I was all in my chunky, funky, creative phase. And I actually had people directly confront me. They're like, I don't want to look like you. Why would I work with you? I'm like, I don't want you to look like you. I don't want you to look like me. I want you to look like you. And I'm really good at that. right? I look like me, you look like you, we're different people. But it's way easier. Like once I had to shift my own image because I was super into this true self-expression stuff. And then I worked with a business consultant who was super specific and serious. And I remember I walked into his boardroom the first day that we had a meeting, and I had my little spiral notebook and I had my little chunky funky clothes on. I was so happy and excited. And I put my spiral notebook down with my glitter pen on his table. And he literally walked into the room, looked at my book, looked at me, left the room, said nothing, came back with one of those moleskin hardcover notebooks with the bookmark, puts it down on the table beside my little Hilroy 5-subject spiral notebook, and says, I want you to transfer all your notes from that into this, and I never want to see that on my table again. And I was like, but my clients love how down to earth I am. And he's like, what kind of consultant are you again? And I'm like, image consultant. He's like, exactly. Like those details matter, but they matter because of the profession I'm in, right? But it matters in the same way that, I don't know, if you're a Reiki master and you show up in a 3-piece suit like a banker, people are going to think it's a little weird. People like things to make sense as much as possible. So you can choose, right? You're like, I know my audience. How much do I want to play into this? How much do I want to go against the expectation? Right?
So
you get to choose.
Well, thank you. So this is the thing. I mean, someone can ask in the audience, well, why does it have to be that way, right? Why does it have to be a certain look for certain things? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, because at the end of the day, people have a choice, but you're almost being restricted or being pushed towards a particular look and format to please the audiences that you're interacting with. Like, so you're being somebody else just so you can be conformed to what the status is. I mean, like you said, you went to the boardroom. Like, I've been to those rooms, and there's an expectation, there's an air to it, like there's an aura. Like, you have to behave a certain way. Like, you have to be executive. You can't be cool and just like relax. I mean, there's certain things that and that's just an example. But there's so many, as you said, just as simple as the notebook needed to be like this particular format look. But why is that? Like, you have to be a certain suit color sometimes is actually better. I mean, look at politics, right? You have to have the red tie or the blue tie. I mean, obviously those are politics, so, but they represent certain things, right? Some elements of but the why is the biggest part of it, right? And I think, as you said, there is a shift. There is a change now. But how is that going to make a difference between a leader, if they look one way versus the other? I mean, technically it shouldn't, but the image is important to a lot.
Yeah.
So let's break that down.
I think there's 2 parts to it. So you asked about the why, like, why is it that way? It's because humans are visual creatures. Humans are also classifying machines. And one thing that we love to do is make meaning out of things. And so our brains are like giant filing cabinets, right? And so the minute that you're born, like baby's out there, like touching things and tasting things and licking things and looking at things, and baby comes across something and it's like touches it and it's kind of fuzzy and it's got 4 legs, and the baby's like, oh, what is this? And the parents go, dog. And the baby's like, oh. Filing cabinet drawer opens up in the baby's mind, fuzzy, 4 legs, soft dog. And the filing cabinet drawer closes. And then over time, baby's experimenting with things and finding other things and comes across something else. Fuzzy, it's 4 legs, it's soft, and the baby goes, oh, dog. And the parents go, no, it's a cat. And the baby's like, oh, fuzzy, 4 legs, soft, oh, cat, shunk, right? And over time, our filing cabinet drawers fill up with stuff. They fill up with the things we experience. They fill up with what our parents tell us about the world. They fill up with what media tells us about the world. They fill up with what our teachers tell us. They fill up with all of that information. So what you think and see and perceive and how you classify things depends on where you grow up as well, right? And the culture that you're in and the environment that you're in. So because people are meaning-making machines, it can be helpful to have a series of guidelines of how things are. And then again, you can choose to fit in those guidelines or not. So the why things are the way they are is because the people who are in those positions did it that way. That became part of the filing cabinet information that we had. And so people decided to do that as well. And it perpetuated it. Now people are starting to challenge those things. So our filing cabinets are changing, but that requires a different skill set for people, right? You really have to dial back your perceptual bias about somebody. So I talk a little bit about that in my book as well, about the paradox of perception. right? Where it's hard to see, it's hard to hear somebody's message if you can't get past the way they look. So you have to work harder to get past the way they look. So my why for thinking about image related stuff is I want people to know who I am. So I'm going to do everything I can to help them understand who I am through the way that I'm showing up in the world. So I'm not pretending to be somebody I'm not. You're never going to catch me in a boardroom in a navy blue 3-piece suit that, I got from, I don't know, Macy's, right? Because I can't, I physically cannot feel good in a suit that doesn't have some kind of personality. I just can't do it. So I can't be myself. So this is the thing, is the why has to be about you. I often call it like a little amuse-bouche, like it's a little appetizer, right? When you show up somewhere, you're telling people who you are, and you're telling people what you think about where you are. So if you're choosing to go way outside the lines in a corporate environment, for example, you're showing people that you don't really care about their guidelines and you want them to work hard to understand you. And some people love that. And some people are like, you know what, I'm going to make it easier for people to understand me. So I'm going to find out where inside this set of guidelines I sit. Where on the spectrum do I sit? And some people love the sameness of things. And that's great for them. I'm not that kind of person, but there are clients that I've worked with, for example, who are in law. And they love the law, but they also love the look of the law. They love the same suit every day. They love the black shoes. They love what they have to wear under their robes in court. They love the ceremony and the ritual of it. And so it's a great place for them. So when I work with people who are not feeling comfortable in the environment that they're in, and they don't really like the dress code and they don't like the look of whatever it is they're doing, I'm like, then you might be in the wrong job. Like, you can use these things as an indicator of where your soul needs you to be. Like, my personal belief is whatever container you arrived here on the planet in is the perfect container to do whatever you're meant to do on this planet. And the sooner you make friends with your container, the easier your life is going to roll. So if you're someplace and your whole body is like, oh, I don't like this place, then probably shouldn't be in that place. And if you have any choice at all, then, you need to do your best to try to walk away.
Well, Katherine, thank you. And I think you terrifically responded to that one. But here's the thing, right? It still talks about how we are as I mean, you're talking about elevated level of corporate leadership, right? But we still live in archaic mode because you still decide on people's abilities and skills and stuff before you even talk to them, just because of a certain way they appear and they look. And because they look maybe cheaper than what you're dressed on. I mean, like you can judge people literally and sometimes even look down at them if they're not really meeting up to the expectation. I mean, we see this in stores sometimes. You walk in.
Oh, yeah.
Fully, looking like, the part, and then you can come back the next day with the same money level and everything. Yep. And you walk in, they look at you like, you're not worth anything. Whether at the restaurant or stuff, this is not something that, if we've seen it happen, it happens. And if anyone out there wants to test it, do it. Go to the same place twice, one with pajamas and one with a sharp suit, and you'll see the difference. You in some places will literally, they look at you like, you don't belong here, right? But that's the thing, like, obviously we got this, as you said, from our teachings, from our habits, from everything, the environment and the cultures that we were raised in. But at the end of the day, it affected also the business world, and so. Sure. But I love it. I mean, your work is to really get people be comfortable with themselves. But here's the thing: we hear this all the time. We need to have our own brand. We need to have our own signature. Sure. You need to have your own look. I mean, these are recommendations that, no matter where you are, or even if you're in the boardroom. I mean, you and I, we talked about hurricane. I mean, that's me. I mean, that's how I roll, right? And so whatever I am, I'm going to be the hurricane. And that's really what it is. If I'm in a room, trust me, there's two ways. I can be very quiet, but once I get started, it's over. I'm not the first one that's gonna make the noise, but by default, somehow it finds me and I'll become that guy, right? But the fact is, it's just the way my signature is. That's how my personality, right? And but people have different ways, and I love what you said. You have your way of doing things. You can't fit in a certain way. You're gonna do it. So how do we get people to adjust to that? I mean, literally, because you said you want to fit in to a degree. Yeah. So you need to train someone to kind of transit from like, well, forget how you like to look And this is how. And by the way, before you answer that one, I can tell you this: I made a promise, in a couple of years back,
Right.
that as my network grows, I will always, even if I have a suit, there will be a T-shirt with the hurricane
Sure.
on it, because that's kind of like how I like it. I mean, but because I want to make a change in the narrative. That's really what it is. I want to be
Exactly.
that different
Yes.
guy that makes a whole unique spin on
Hmm.
things. I don't
Hmm.
care. As a matter of fact, true story, in my industry in the 90s, people did not like. Remember, I told you we wore suits and stuff.
Sure.
I literally started the change with the t-shirts and the polos, and we started uniforms for the teams and things like that before that was even a big thing.
Right.
You didn't see those things in the early 90s. And
Hmm.
if you went to my industry, we were actually in the streets doing our tabletops and events and festivals, and we all
Yeah.
had the same t-shirt, like t-shirts or stuff, because it made a difference, and you make it cool, like everybody's equal. And by the way, whether you're the VP or the rep, you're
Yeah.
wearing the same shirt. It's all cool and you're part of the team. And people come in. There's no
Mhm.
hierarchy. Like I'm like red versus white, or like someone like you're a
Right.
captain. You have the white T-shirt versus the blue T-shirt. I'm just like
Mhm.
the old NYPD look. you know, but those are some of the concepts. But
Yeah.
we got to change things. Now your work is really to come in and kind of really help someone express themselves
Mhm.
in their environment. And so you understand the environment, then you give them the tips and tricks to actually maneuver through it so they can
Mhm.
be a little bit more acceptable. Am I,
Right.
is that really what the mission is?
Okay, so that's part of it. But the other flip side of that is helping my experienced leaders prepare the table for people who are showing up as their whole selves. Because one of the chief things that I run up against is people are saying, well, we want different people, we want diverse people in our come and play in our sandbox, but we don't want anything to change about our sandbox. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. They don't need to change. You need to change, which means you need to get out of this paradox of perception where if someone shows up not looking exactly the way you would expect someone to look, you need to wait and speak to them and interact with them and see who they are as people. You need to be able to handle more emotion. You need to be able to handle a wider spectrum of all kinds of abilities that you're seeing. If you really want diverse tables, which outperform homogenous tables every single time, there's a ton of research on that. If you really want a diverse table, you as a leader need to be prepared to handle that level of diversity and not expect people to just be one thing, one way all the time, because our leadership model's moving. So you and I talked about it just briefly before we started the show, where the leadership model used to be based on hierarchy. So hierarchy, authority, and compartmentalization. So as a leader, you could rely on your positional authority to influence people. But now the leadership model is moving into this more integrated, relational, and whole model, which means that you need to be able to cultivate relationships with people. You need to be fully integrated as a person. You can't just be a great performer at work and a jerk at home, or vice versa, right? You have to be the same person. If you're not the same person at work as you are at home, like think of yourself as a piece of, I don't know, stereo equipment. You can turn the volume up and you can turn it down, but you still need to be the same equipment all the way across the board. So as a leader, you need to work on becoming more integrated. You need to work on showing your whole self at work, not just part of yourself at work. And you need to be prepared for the resulting humanization and humanity that comes with people showing up as their whole selves as well, which means that we need to lean into this flexibility. We need to lean into these ideas that someone's not always going to look the way that you expect them to look, and embrace it as opposed to try to stamp it out as much as possible. So definitely, as you're saying, look, I'm going to wear a suit, but I'm always going to wear a t-shirt. You're part of changing that narrative. And there's a part of me that does like, I do like, just personally, I like the categorization of things in terms of, not a ton of it, but like if you go to the opera, it's nice if you're going to dress up, but you're still going to enjoy the opera if you're wearing your jeans too. And certainly in a geographically really casual city, like Vancouver is super casual. You don't have to work very hard to stand out or look put together here. Everybody's running around wearing fleece, right? They're like wearing their athletic wear. It's not, but if you go to some place like New York and you're going to be on Wall Street, you need to represent. So it's really about, part of my work is about helping people find their way, but part of it is about helping leaders prepare the table as well for people who are going to show up with their whole selves.
Well, thank you. I'm listening to you. It's funny because there's a couple of examples. One is, here's the thing: you wear a suit, like for example, when you present, right?
Yep.
I mean, you look at TED Talks right now. A lot of they're not really. A lot of them are not suited up, right? So
No.
they're comfortable. But I actually I believe in that concept because of this.
Mm.
Listen, I've done maybe thousands of presentations in my life. I mean, I started as a tour guide, so you can
Sure.
I used to do
Yeah.
every hour I was doing a tour. So you're like standing for, you're moving. I'm not a still person. I'm very animated. So yeah, as a matter of
Mhm.
fact, if you see me doing this, on the show, that's because I want to keep my hands a little bit, to myself, because I'll be all over the place. I mean, literally when I first started, one of my mentors, I asked him like, what do you think of my shows? He said, well, you move too much with your hands. So try to get a pen or something,
Mhm.
so I decided to start doing this. So when someone is talking, I'm just holding my hands to myself. I know
Right.
some people can say that this posture kind of looks a little intimidating. So there's discussion about that. But so there's different things. But I always ask, like, it depends on how you may say that, but that's not the purpose, right? I'll tell you what the purpose is. You ask, right? But the other one, like I said, so when you present, you want to be active. So I stopped wearing the suits when I go to presentation. I wear my polo. I get comfortable. I do
Mhm.
trainings. I'm not going to come like with a tie and to do a full training to people. I want to be interactive. I want to be in the trenches. So that's just how I do it. And it made a big difference for me in terms of interacting and being a lot more. And it's funny because I like to travel too. And one of the areas that I love to, well, a way of traveling is through cruising. So
Okay.
in the cruise ships, they have formal nights, right? So I
Okay.
could tell you, I've done
Yeah.
over 30 cruises. So the first 10 to 15 cruises, I used to wear the tux and I mean, I really,
Yeah. You
come
take
all
advantage of the opportunity.
right. But then I started like, literally more recent years. I'm like, I don't feel like dressing up for this thing. So I put a blazer on, a t-shirt or like or shirt, casual and jeans. And that's it.
Yeah.
I literally started transiting. I don't know if it's the age thing. I don't know what it is, but it started like, kind of like I'm not into all that, being so in your
Mhm.
face and kind of thing. No, listen, I love fashion. I love to dress nice, for the
Mhm.
occasion. If, the right occasion, as you said, I mean, dress to impress is something that we all do, but it's the context as to where you want to do it. But I don't want to do it like you said, like it's like authority. You have to wear this, otherwise, like companies dictate. Like you have casual Fridays, you cannot be casual the rest of the days. Business
Mhm.
casual. So some companies have rules. Now, of course, I get it. You work in a corporate, someone sets up, but you said it best. Is that was the format. And
Right.
so, and love what you said, boxes, right? I have this thing like people say, think out of the box. I say, there's no box. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's no box, there's no box. The sky's the limit,
Right.
right? So the concept is that you stated something about the shift. Like you have to train the leaders to be
Mhm.
willing to shift their way of
Yeah.
thinking to be able to absorb and accept the new
Mhm.
wave. And there is that conflict, right? So millennials, the Jay Z, and all this stuff is
Mhm.
not the same. They're not going to dress up the same way we did. My kids are not like me. They're just
Yeah.
different. You know, so I love that. Now, how difficult do you see that happening in the real business world today between some of the archaic models and getting them to
Mhm.
really shift, or at least be able to accept some change, because there's always that level where no, we want this, and that's it, this is
Mhm.
going to be just the way it is, like
Mhm.
my way the highway kind of thing. But how much resistance do you see, and do you see that there is an ability and acceptance today?
I do see some resistance generally from people that are 55 and over. And not all people who are 55 and over, because the people who are really doing well, the leaders that are in senior management now that are really doing well, have really grabbed the bit and they see where the horse is going. They're like, okay, and they think it's fun. And I think they were probably like secret rule breakers early on. And now they're like, yeah, okay, I'm free. We can do what we like. And of course, the pandemic accelerated everything, right? Because all of a sudden people are working at home. Nobody wants to wear a suit when they're working at home. That doesn't make sense. It's the dumbest thing ever. And then people were like, oh, actually, comfort is a really good thing. I want to be more comfortable in my work. So it depends on the company. There are some leaders that I've run into that are really rigid. And I got to tell you, the turnover in their companies is massive. They are losing people left, right, and center. And I think what's going to happen is the leaders that are really, really resistant are the ones that are going to either age out or they're going to die out, or they're going to be forced out. It's like the bus is already going, get on, or you're going to be left behind. And I've had a couple of conversations with some older leaders. There's one woman that I know who is really, she's a really structured person though. And I think part of the issue is that for people like that, they find safety in the structure. And safety is important for people to have when they're in a workplace or really anywhere. Safety is a primary concern for people. A lot of people, not everybody. Some people have higher risk tolerance than others and don't need it to be as structured. But for those people, like for people like her, she's like, I don't want to show all my feelings at work, and I don't want people to come and bring their feelings to me. And part of the problem is she has not done the deep interpersonal work for her to be comfortable enough with her own feelings for her to be comfortable with somebody else's. And I see the most resistance in people who are unwilling to do the work. They're like, I'm too old to do that work. My career's not going to be that long to do the work. I don't really care about that work. And I'm like, this is where the world is going. People are becoming more aware. And we often get just aware enough to do a job. And then we don't always want to do the extra work that it's going to take to then really welcome in other kinds of people. And so when you say, is there resistance? Sure. Is the resistance going to be overcome? You bet. The tsunami is coming. Those people are going to be washed away because it's just not the way it is anymore.
Oh, thank you, Katherine. I mean, that's a great message for our, I guess, business people out there. If you are in a position of leadership, it doesn't matter, especially if a higher level where you are the ones who are making decisions in terms of corporate hiring and, who gets what and whatever. I think it is a clear message that we need to be with the times. I mean, again, a good example, as you mentioned, the pandemic. Before, it was mandatory to be in the office. Now people have proven, like you can have sold the idea that you can do the work equally from remote, but because we were forced, everybody, the companies adjusted. They still, made their profits. They still did all the stuff. They adjusted it with the technology. And as you said, the comfort didn't make a difference. And with a good technology, stuff and good, performance is performance. If you can put the metrics in there where people have to perform, that's it. I mean, there are companies that are talking about 3 days work now versus, a day, weekdays type of thing, right? There's different things you can work partially. I mean, you have companies that are giving unlimited PTO. You can be off, but you have targets, on a monthly basis that you have to meet in your performance, whatever that job is. So there's a lot of change in, I guess system. And I do, again, you mentioned like Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs and all, Elon Musk. Those are all the folks that kind of made some real signature changes and shifts and it does make a difference in the way it is. But you're right, like someone is not willing to make the change in their own selves. But here's the thing. So this is a question, and I don't know if it's ever been asked or not, but like, you would never think that we all are human. So it doesn't matter what level you are, right?
No.
You still have your own mental status. That's the part that we never see. Like we see, I'm in the position of authority and someone is entry level. There is no difference really. I mean, we're just, ranking officers, if you want to call it, in a company when you are in leadership, right? So, but, as you said, someone may not want to be the emotional piece and, involved in stuff and being a little bit more caring or empathy, right? That's a big deal. And there's a lot of lacking of that sometimes, right? So being able to, like, for example, someone really needs that time, you give them the time, you got to care for people. If you show that you care, they're going to care more for you. You're there for them. They're going to be there. Actually, that's something that I've established a long time ago. And I work with people that way. When I ask someone for a favor, they'll jump because I'm always there for them.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. It's a teamwork, right? And I'll chime in too if I need to, right? Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it now. And next time when I'm not here, you gotta take care of business, right? And that's how you do it. But not everybody is, again, the problem is always adjustability or just being able to adaptability, right? It's a big deal, and change is difficult for a lot of people, especially if they set in their old ways. As you said, the current is coming, the wave is coming. And if you're not solid enough, you're gonna be washed out very easily. And there's nothing you can do because now even the laws and the labor laws and stuff are gonna catch up to these things, and you're gonna have some, I would say leeway in the process. Now, obviously, you're in Canada, the U.S., but
Sure.
it's there are similarities in most of the parts of the world, right?
Mhm.
And so maybe some parts are catching up sooner than others, so this is all happening for you, but really no one is looking at like what the mental ability of because here's the thing, nobody gets to become a president and stuff and they check, are you really fit to rule this company? I mean, you're right, nobody does that, right? I mean, or any level, right? So you will do that if you were to go to, I don't know, law enforcement or some agency,
Mhm.
really. But in general, we don't have that in the business world, right? So your emotions are yours to carry with you. Your taboos are yours.
Mhm.
Your prejudices are yours. Your biases are yours. Your culture is yours. So unless you're willing to accept and change, now I guess in the States and Canada, we're a little bit. We have been more progressive. There's compared to Europe. I mean, there is a big difference. I have to say, like in terms of
Yeah.
how the labor law works and how people are more accepted and versus. And of course, there's races, there's discrimination, there's rules, and there's all this stuff. But that's the thing, like, how we really, and when you work with people, I mean, is there, you know some sort of work that needs to be done, maybe for someone, like maybe they need to check, themselves to see if they're able to
Yeah.
interact with people, because I think we all need, like, we do this mental show, on a monthly basis with Dr. Heim, and
Mhm.
one thing he said that is we're not doing good, or at least we haven't done great at, is mental health as humans.
Right.
We're suffering. Everybody's got their own problems.
Mhm.
Doesn't
For
matter what
sure.
level you're. So that impacts the way we do things and how we interact with people.
Yeah, for sure. Like the hand that you were dealt is the hand that you were dealt, right? If you grew up with trauma, if you grew up with abuse, if you, whatever, right? If you grew up with neglect, any of those things, the hand you were dealt is the hand you were dealt. But if you die with the same mindset that you had when you were born, that's your fault. The hand you were dealt is not your fault. But if you die with that same hand, that's your fault. Like your job, particularly as a leader, is to do the inquiry, to do the development, to learn the lessons you came here to learn, right? Just mystery school. That's why we're all here. We all have lessons to learn. We all have things to do. But if you're just going to sit around and not actually do the work and expect that everything will stay the same and people will just change around you, good luck with that. That's your fault. And I think that's the message that we don't send to people often enough, is that A, it's okay to check yourself. And B, it's necessary to check yourself. And C, if you want to get where you want to go in today's world, it's essential. You have to do the work, or you just decide you're going to check out. But if you're only, if you're a leader and you're like 35 and running high on ego, you got a long way to go. You better get yourself to therapy, get it handled.
Well, Catherine, that's a big word, ego. I think power trips and ego. I mean, we've had a few discussions about this in the past. That's
Mhm.
big. I mean, it's I think
Yeah, of
everybody at a certain point the ego is always there. We all have ego.
course.
It's how we tame it versus not tame it. I mean, we are in control to a degree. Now you get it, in your system and you let it get to your head, then you start walking like, your stuff doesn't stink, right? So,
Right.
just we believe in the show
Yeah.
here, but the fact of the matter is, you don't have to do that, right? But it can happen to the best of us.
Sure.
You get an authority job, or again, especially early on in your leadership ladder, right? When you
Yeah.
get that first role as like, you're the manager, I'm the boss.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my God. So now you have that. So it is very difficult to check at that age,
Mhm.
and like you said, younger folks, you have a long way to go. So you need to have this. It's a marathon, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You need to be able to manage well the expectations of the world and what's to come. And so
Mhm.
you need to have a good pace. It's
Mhm.
not very, I mean, I think I would one of the examples that I think that is almost related to this is technology and adaptation to technology. I mean, look, AI right now.
Sure. Yeah. No,
Some
right.
people are resistant. No, we don't want to do this. What is this? It's going to take over, blah, blah, blah. But it is what we
Yeah.
can't run away from it. It is
That's
happening.
right.
It is imminent. It's existent. It will only get bigger and bigger. So
Mhm.
either get with the program or you're going to be way behind. It's going to take over.
Right. Right. And I think I touch on that in my book because I think a little bit the thing about AI is that now that we have machines to do the mechanized, like all of that compartmentalization and hierarchy and authority made a lot of sense in the industrial age, where every bolt needed to be in the same place at the same time, the same way every time, right? That's why the assembly line was so great and all those things, right? So people started acting like machines in order to do mechanized kinds of things. But now that we have machines to do all those things, now it's more important than ever for us to lean into being human, which means it's going to get messy. It's going to get emotional. It's going to get discombobulated, and it's enjoyable. It's like, just get in there and enjoy the mess. Enjoy it. We need to lean into all the things that humans can do that machines can't do. Like, as I saw a meme the other day, it was I never thought that AI would be like writing poetry and painting paintings. It's like, I want AI to be like doing the things that I don't want to be doing, like cleaning the toilets or delivering, I don't know, whatever, so that I can do the creative things. And I'm kind of curious actually to see, as people lean into their humanity, what kind of creativity is going to be birthed out of this, right? Now that AI is handling all those rote things, because, oh my God, Chat GPT and all the other associated softwares are so great. Like, need a book promotion plan, for example. I'm like, Chat GPT, please write me a book promotion plan for these dates with these things and all the things I need to do. And spits out like a 15-page promotional plan that I hand to my assistant and say, go. Right? It's amazing.
I love it. But again, you adapt.
Like, what are you using the tool for, right?
That's right. Exactly. It's adjusting to it.
Yeah, that's right. And so what's the humanity that you can bring to your workplace? And for leaders that are like, so let's say someone's doing a CEO function. One of the CEOs, he wrote the foreword for my book, Ryan Ben. He's the CEO of Alive Publishing here in Vancouver. And I love the way he leads, because he surrounds himself with really great people, first of all. And he talks to all of them. He relates to everybody like they're people, which they are, instead of peons to do their bidding. And I think that's the big mistake that I see some other leaders make, where they're just pushing more and more work onto people. They're expecting them to work harder. They're expecting them to do more, not paying them anymore. Like things like, oh, someone's working remotely. Well, I'm going to dock their salary because they're working remotely and now I don't need to pay for an office. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. Right? You're paying somebody for the results they're offering to your company, not for covering your office space. Get a grip. Right? And I think, the more we can lean into this treating people like people, the better we're going to be. Because really, dehumanization is the one of the central issues of our time today. And that's how people hurt people. They dehumanize them and then they hurt them. That's not okay.
Well, thank you. And, it's amazing that the example you said of a great CEO example who actually interacts and treats everybody equal and is involved with everybody, knows everyone, knows their first name, their family members. They do outings. They do a lot of, team building stuff, all these retreats and things like that. That's a different, and by the way, it doesn't just, limit itself to, I guess, the C-suite. I mean, it can go beyond that.
Right. And it's all the way down.
Exactly. And that's how it's supposed to be technically.
Yeah.
But
and it starts with you. Like, that's the thing that I think people miss. Everybody's like, oh, society, we want society to change. I'm like, you are it. You are society. So get with it. Like, change yourself, then you change the people around, then people around you change because of necessity. When one thing in a system changes, the rest of the system has to adapt. So it starts with us. And that's how we change the systems. Starts with us, we work together with others, and that's how we get the society that we want. So if you don't like the way society looks, that's your fault. Like, get on it. Get out there, get organizing, get voting, get doing what you need to do. I think we need more people in the world who are really aware, who are doing what they want to do, who are making things better for other people, and who are challenging the status quo on a daily basis. And that's my work. That's what I'm here to do, is wake those people up.
It is happening. I think I'm sure you've heard the awakening is happening, and there's a lot of talks about it. There to extend. I mean, especially with social media, there's a lot more voices out there. There's more talk about this. So it's shifting the narrative. It's shifting the whole way of looking at it. But a good example as to why people are also archaic in a lot of ways. And for example, listen, if you're a CEO, C-suite in general, you're in charge of the P&L, right?
Sure.
So you can use that like, well, we can cut, a little bit of here, a little bit there. And so it always kind of like I don't know why it winds up literally with staff and budgets and stuff like that. And you cut salaries. I like the first one. Now, I get the business part of it. And there's some tricks and, the trades that anybody can play with. But, I've also seen, great CEOs who actually would not do that, would not take that route. Yeah, it's not about the people. There's a lot of ways you can, increase performance, double up, do more stuff, get more profit, and more, I guess, productivity, as opposed to cutting things. Now, I get it. a
Mhm.
pandemic, for example, was a big thing that nobody can do
Right.
anything about. But even that, a lot of companies were able to manage through it well. So,
Mhm.
and as you said, it's just on that CEO and whoever that person may be, it's their person that's going to make a difference. And
Mhm.
again, you hit around the money. We are individuals.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what level you are in the business world, you're still one person, and you can make changes. Now, some people feel the authority, and therefore delegation is the name of the game. Let's delegate everything.
That's
And
true.
I have no, like my job is to just run people, right? Well, that's not how it is. You run things, you
Uh,
run, you have the vision, you lead. That's the thing. The
mhm.
difference between boss and leader is really you're not pushing people, you're with the people, you're
Yeah,
leading
you're
them.
taking them with you. Yeah,
That's right.
you're taking them with you on a journey. I heard a great definition from a guy named James Wedmore who does digital course. He helps people develop their digital courses. Really cool dude. But he said, the CEO is the person who has the what and the why firmly in their mind. And then the people that he works with, the executors, are the people who have the who and the how. The CEO is fixed on the what and the why, and then the people that work with him or her they are the what and the how, or sorry, the who and the how. And I like that a lot because definitely as you get up into leadership, there are things you just can't be doing, right? If you're in the C-suite, there's things that you're responsible for. You have a different set of tasks than you do from someone, say, who's in the mailroom, right? And if you spend your CEO time doing mailroom things, then you're not focusing on what you're there to do, right? So it's not that those roles are unequal in terms of peopleness, right? Both humans, both fulfilling a role. It's only that you have different functions in a company. And I think it's okay to have those different functions because nobody can do anything by themselves, right? We all have to work together, and there are lots of different functions in a company that need to be handled. But I really think that the key is like all the people in the company are people, no matter what job they're doing. And they all have similar concerns, and they all want to feed their families, and they all want to have a little fun, and they all want to have meaningful work, and they all want to know why they're doing what they're doing. And they want to feel good about their work as much as possible. And I think as leaders, if we can keep that in mind, then that's going to create better companies and better opportunities for people in future.
That's big stuff. It's big, but it's simple. I mean, it's not something we don't know. We know
Mhm.
these things. The
Right.
question is, do we
Do we do
accept
them?
it, and do we act exactly? So, I mean, talk the
Right.
talk, walk the walk, right? You know,
Exactly.
you actually are guiding people through your work, consulting and
Yeah.
coaches. So you coach people who need the help, and you consult for the expertise, and as you defined it, right? And I
Mhm.
love, that the example you said, like, there is the what and the where, and certainly the who and the how
Yeah.
but you can't have one versus without the other, right? It's all in
Exactly.
one. So those are things that are important to kind of like accept. And oh, by the way, this is not just limited to business. This
No,
is
of course
life.
not. Yeah.
We all have the same. We all lead somehow.
Mhm.
Like everybody is a leader in their own world to a
Yeah.
degree, right? Doesn't matter what's your status,
Right.
but so that's one thing. And so now let me ask this question. You have worked with a lot of folks.
Mhm.
What is maybe a good example of what not to do? Which, because I think
Oh,
that's a big one.
what not to do. It's so funny. I've seen many examples of what not to do. Okay, what's a good one for your audience? What not to do? Do not make other people accountable for your own failings.
Awful.
Don't toss around blame. Don't toss around shame. Don't bully people. It's really funny that you say what not to do because I spend so much of my time thinking about what to do, and I generally focus on my energy on what to do instead. I don't spend it's like a mind shift to go, what are you not supposed to do? And I think one of the big things to not do is to shut down. Just don't shut down. Even if it's hard, even if it takes time, just try to keep your heart open as much as possible. Don't shut down. Don't close yourself off because we need each other. And I think that's one of the fundamental truths that people would do well to accept is we actually need each other. We are a social species. We don't do well on our own. It's not possible for us to be all by ourselves, we don't function very well. So we need each other. And so if you can keep your heart open, don't shut down. That's one of the best things you can do.
Thank you, Catherine. And I love that whole thing about, what not to do as far as putting the blame on everybody,
Right.
because a true leader is the captain of the ship. You
Yeah,
go with you go with the ship, you go down with the ship. You can't put the blame on everything. You still are in charge. You still at the helm. If
that's right.
something went wrong, that means you were not paying attention. If something went wrong, that means you were
Right.
not doing your part, right? So,
Exactly.
so, so, and I love it because that's a big deal. Like a lot of people would automatically deflect, like, well, who didn't do this? Whose head's gonna roll
Mhm.
today? Listen, I mean, I literally was in a company one time where every Friday I was like, well, who's gonna go today?
Right.
And I could not, accept
Like
that. And
who's going to get fired every Friday?
yeah, yeah.
Yikes.
So I
That's
mean,
like
like, well,
Glenn Ross, like second prize is a set of steak knives, third prize is you're fired.
that's my point.
Like
Like,
that.
you
Ah,
you cannot really, when you think about it, right? Like,
yeah.
how do you like roll that way? Like, in business,
Yeah.
these are humans, families. There's a lot of stuff attached to one person working anywhere.
Right.
And so it is a challenge stuff. I mean, obviously, if you choose to
Sure.
be an employee,
Mm,
you have to do your job and you have a performance, and I get it. There's nothing wrong. Performance is a key. But
yeah.
like, depends also what you do. I mean, some you can't always outperform. I mean, listen, I'm in sales, all about super performing, but there's things that that there are days that are going to be bad days. There are
Yeah.
not you're not going to close every deal. There are
Mhm.
things, so you have to be understandable. Like once you do every necessary step and you got all the check marks, then you should
Yeah.
be fine. See, that's the thing. I look at it this way. If we do it all right and we do all the stuff and we try to make sure there's nothing, we did our part. Now let's see how it plays. Typically, if you
That's right.
did it right, things are going to go well. But
Yeah.
there's always an option. There's always something that can go wrong.
Right.
And
Of
the
course.
rule is what can go wrong will go wrong, right? So we know that
Sure.
that's one of the laws, right? So be aware of that. But it changes the dynamics of how we think, right? And how we do. So
Yeah.
hopefully people are listening to your message that
Mhm.
don't do that, no blame game, and definitely don't shut down because people look up to you. That's the thing. And in leadership, people are look at like how you behave, how you deal with things. And you
Mhm.
can't possibly as a leader, the first thing, oh boy, that's it, I quit, or like, I
Yeah. Yeah.
you take responsibility and you make, shifts. And that's what you see, like all these big guys, like, that are in the world right now. They all had their own ups and downs and they make
Sure.
things, they make moves, they make alliances, they turn
Mhm.
things around. You can.
Right.
So we can do that. Now, Catherine, you mentioned the book a couple times.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I'm
So let's
excited
talk
about
about the book.
it.
When is
Sure.
it released? What's the name of the book?
Okay, so the book is called Executive Being: Humanizing Business One Leader at a Time. And it's going to be released by Business Expert Press in New York in October of this year. I don't know the exact release date, but we're thinking mid-October is when it's going to be released. And I'm very excited about it because in it, I talk about the leadership paradigm shifting. So if people are curious about that, there's some philosophy around that and some stats around that and what's happening in the world. But more importantly, in that book, there are 7 specific practices for you to undertake to become more human in your leadership and not be so stressed out about executive presence and leadership. And then at the back of that book, I've also got 7 special appendices for my very experienced leaders who might be having a little trouble shifting. Because when I wrote it, I sent it out to my first readers and we were talking about the old white guys, right? Stereotype, I know. We were talking about the old white guys, and they were like, it'd be really great if you gave them some tips for what they could do instead of being the way that they are. And so I did write 7 appendices for my old white guys. And then I sent it out to an old white guy, and he was so mad that I changed it to 7 appendices for my very experienced leaders. Because he's right. Shouldn't be stereotyping, right? Not old white guys are like dinosaurs, but some of them are. So there are some 7 special appendices there for very experienced leaders who are having trouble with the shift, 7 practices for somebody to become a more human leader, and lots of philosophy on how things are changing and what to do about it.
But I love it because at the end of the day, well, I mean, you give the 7 things, to make a move. People you give them the tools. Come
Right.
on, you know.
Totally.
But I love the concept of the book. I mean, really, how to make experts and leaders humanized again. Like let's put
Yeah,
back a human into the process, and not
that's
just
right.
looking at digits like numbers and like a graph of number, because that's what it is. Sometimes that's all there is. And again, believe me, I talk by experience, because in the world of sales, it is numbers.
Oh,
It's a
yeah,
number
you can
game,
tell
right?
by the numbers.
However, I don't look at, the numbers. I look at who are the reps, who are the people, who are the agents,
That's right.
because there's a lot of factors that go into what they do, where they are,
Of
their
course.
deployment. So you look at these things, not just necessarily. I mean, obviously the numbers are part of the game, and we all, when we take a job that has a target or
Yeah,
and every job has a performance that you
of
have to meet,
course.
or
You're still
KPIs, right?
responsible. Yeah, you're responsible for the results you generate.
Correct.
You're
But
responsible
without
for that.
but without losing the human factor.
That's right. Because businesses need to change their metrics. So even on a sales team, yeah, for sure, you want to look at leads, conversions, and revenue generated on all those things. But if your team is not performing, you can't only look at that. You have to look at, well, what's their mental health? How much psychological safety do they have in this role? Are they selling to the right people? How are they related?
Relations.
Like, again, it's the relational piece, which of course, being in sales. But I think businesses need to look at their metrics, and they're not measuring the right things necessarily. It's not all about money. And a lot of new employees don't necessarily care about the money. They want flexibility. They want growth opportunities. They want more things than just cash.
Again, that was the tradition, right? That's that
Yeah,
historically,
that's right.
that's how it's been. I mean,
Yeah,
even the system has almost been synchronized to that effect. You go to
of
school,
course. Of course.
you're being taught the system where you're going to finish your school and you're going to get
Right.
into the job market, and
Yeah.
this is what you're going to be, and you're going to work up your to the
Yeah.
ladder, and so on and so forth. So it's
Doesn't
been
work like
designed
that
that.
anymore. Yeah, and it doesn't work like that anymore. Like, it's breaking down. Well, we're in late stage capitalism now, so everything's going to hell. But now we got to change and get ready for whatever's coming after that.
Listen,
I think it's an exciting time to be alive,
a lot of stuff happening, and
right?
you're right. I mean, change is, I change is good. Bottom line, I mean, yeah, I mean, sometimes we change for the better. Hopefully not for the worse, but we should only change for the better. I mean, if
Yeah.
worse, you're going to be in the same position. so, so
Right.
you want to make it, to a better place.
Mhm.
Wow. Well. Listen. I mean, we've covered quite a bit of grounds here. I mean, you've touched on a lot of things, and I mean, again, folks, if you're watching or listening, if you're in the business world, you're leading, or you're working your way up. By the way, you actually work with mid-level up. That's your core,
So my
and now
my one-to-one work has been director level and higher. So if someone's working with me one-on-one, and I work with executive teams as well, but I think this book is accessible for all levels. And in fact, I was going to say, if people want to find the book, they can actually go to my website, lzrkconsulting.com/get the book. Or if you look on the left-hand side menu, it says get the book. And when you sign up for the pre-sale list, I will send you my 10 latest articles on how to create a strong visual signature absolutely free of charge.
very nice, very nice. Well. So now, do you envision yourself working with, I guess, leaders to be?
Yeah, well, this is what's happened. So a lot of my experienced leaders have said, hey, look, we really need you to work with some of our younger leaders. When are you going to develop a model to do that? And so now I'm just starting to work with my team on developing a one-to-many model, like a group coaching format or a video training program, something like that. It's very exciting. We're just fleshing it out now. And I've been resisting it for a long time. And my clients are all like, look, you're too good a secret. We need you to reach more people and help more people. And so I'm finally going, okay, I'm ready and stepping into it.
That's
And now I
all.
have study showers who have done it, so they can show me how to do it too.
That's awesome, because now you're really making a difference in changing,
Yeah.
the way we think in leadership, the way we think in, corporate hierarchy, and the way we are, like, the wave of the future. I mean, you're really bringing the next generation of leaders, concepts and mindset, and how we should actually lead versus how we did in the
Mhm.
past. So thank you for that. I mean, I think it's needed in the business world. It's needed in a lot of areas, but specifically in this particular, niche, it's a big deal. Now, before we close our show today, well, first of all, someone wants to work with you. How do they do that? Like, if someone is listening right now and they want your
Yeah.
services.
There's two ways to do it. So you can either go to my website and just hit the contact us form and submit, and that's the easiest way to do it. Or if you want to be on Instagram, just DM me on Instagram and say, hey, I'd like to work with you, and I'll talk to my executive assistant about setting up an appointment.
Then you do an assessment, you guys agree,
Yeah,
and then you do whatever you have to do.
that's right.
What you
Yeah,
do best.
definitely. There's an interview process. I don't take very many clients. I usually only take anywhere from 10 to 12 clients a year, one-to-one. So it's definitely a process. But again, this new one-to-many model is coming out, and get the book and get started.
All right. Excellent. Well, so Catherine, before we depart, we close this show. What would be a good, I guess, takeaway for our audiences?
I think one thing that was of great service to me when I was trying to figure out what my purpose was in the world and the work that I wanted to do, the best piece of advice that I ever got was don't think of the industry or the title or the specific job that you want. Think of the qualities you want your work to have. And so when I was thinking about this years ago, I came up with a handful. I always like 5 things. So 5 things. And it was freedom. So now I do what I like. I have lots of autonomy. Beauty. I needed to have some beauty in my world. Joy. I wanted to feel joyful in my work. Generosity. So I needed to give back. And ease of spirit, so that I would know wherever I was, whatever I was doing the right thing in the right place at the right time to do the right thing. So I think if you are struggling right now and you're looking for where you belong in this world, go within to go without.
That's it. That's pretty powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Catherine. It's been an honor, a privilege, fun. I learned a lot. This was a great exchange, and I mean, you're bringing so much expertise, folks. Do check out the website. I'll have it on the description of the show, so do link up. Again, if you are interested in working with Catherine directly, there's a process, but hey, there's going to be something that to be learned there. If you think that's the best thing, out there, you got to do it, right? And then the book is coming up in October. You can do a pre-order, I guess, early on, and you get the articles.
Yeah, get on the pre-sale list at my website, and you'll be the first to know when it goes live.
Wow, cool. All right, well, there you have it, folks. Catherine, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. It was a real pleasure talking with you.
It was mine, and there you have it, folks. We're closing. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic. I'm Hurricane H. Bye for now.